They pushed her off a rooftop. No safety rope. No warning. 2 full stories straight down into a concrete training yard. If she hadn't twisted midair, she would have died. They thought she'd broken her back. They thought she wouldn't stand again. But they didn't know who she was. Lieutenant Commander Raina Locke, Navy SEAL, Tier 1, Urban Infiltration Specialist. She'd survived blast zones, collapsed buildings, and black bag operations no one ever admits happened. And now, those 3 corporals had given her something no reprimand ever could, permission. Because 24 hours later, on a cold warehouse floor, she didn't file a report. She didn't ask for justice. She delivered it. Before we show you the moment they finally looked up from the mat, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. We read every single one. Hit like, tap subscribe, and ring the bell. Because the story doesn't end with a fall. It ends with the kind of correction only a Navy SEAL delivers face-to-face. Wind cut hard at this height. 2 stories up, the rooftop of Juke's vertical training tower stretched beneath the pre-dawn gray. Sodium lights buzzed. The air smelled of steel cable and wet nylon. Raina stood near the edge, clipboard in one gloved hand, timing baton on her belt. Her uniform was sharp, hair tied regulation tight. Boots scuffed at the soles, spotless everywhere else. Everything about her stance said ready. Edge approach drill, she said, voice steady. Marker 3. Time starts when your front boot crosses. Reset at the corner after rappel. No drama, just instructions. Recruits and instructors rotated around her. Marines and SEAL candidates paired off. Some focused, some not. Off to the side, 3 corporals lingered. Mason, Cade, and Turner. Mid-20s, boots dirty, harnesses still undone. They hadn't liked how she corrected them earlier. Clean, direct, without insult. That was what got under their skin. She doesn't even look at us when she talks, Cade muttered. Walks like she's 2 ranks higher, Turner added. She is, Mason said. She's SEAL. Doesn't make her untouchable. Raina knelt at the edge, checking an anchor hook. Didn't look up, didn't pause, just shifted her weight, letting them know she was aware. Mason whispered, maybe we show her what slipping really looks like. Cade stiffened. You're joking. Turner said nothing. Raina had checked every harness that morning. Every rope. Every anchor. Control mattered. Control kept people alive. And it always started at the edge. She stepped to that edge now. Clipboard tucked under her arm. Boots behind the yellow line. 2 stories below, thick crash pads formed the landing zone, normally for control drops. Not today. The corporals hovered again. Mason nudged Cade. Bet she drops that clipboard if her feet leave the ground. She just needs a scare, Cade muttered. Turner stayed silent. Stay clear of the edge marker, Raina said without turning. Not a warning, just fact. Mason smirked and stepped too close. Her heel shifted. Gravel whispered. Presence behind her. She turned. Not fast enough. 2 hands shoved her square between the shoulders. No rage. Just calculation. She fell. Instinct fired. Knees tucked. Body twisted. The rooftop vanished above her. No scream. Only wind and the hard thud of impact. The crash pads saved her life, not the pain. Her ribs hit first, then her shoulder. The clipboard bounced off her chest and skidded away. Air blasted from her lungs in one violent exhale. She lay still. On the roof, the corporals froze. She landed on the pads, Turner whispered. Too hard, Cade said. Way too hard. Mason backed up, face draining. She's not moving. But then she did. Raina's fist closed. Her arm bent. She pushed herself upright, 1 knee down, 1 foot planted. Controlled breath. A medic sprinted across the yard. Ma'am, are you? I'm fine, she said. Continue training. Her shoulder pinched. Her spine favored the left. Pain flashed once, then disappeared behind her eyes. She picked up the clipboard, dusted it off and looked up, finding the 3 shadows on the roof. Not angry, not afraid, just aware. Raina walked to the medbay with measured steps, spine straight despite the tearing ache along her ribs. The clinic sat on the east side of the facility, connected to admin by a narrow hallway that smelled of antiseptic and canvas. Inside, Chief Petty Officer Lang looked up sharply. Lieutenant Commander Locke, fall from 2 stories? Sit. Now. I'm standing, she said, placing the clipboard on the bed. Make it quick. Lang sighed, the kind medics use when they know arguing is pointless. He guided her onto the exam table, checking her shoulder for alignment. She winced once. Mild spinal compression, he said. Bruising for sure. Nothing broken. You should rest. No rest, Raina said. I'm reporting for afternoon rotation. Lang froze. Ma'am, that was a 2-story drop. You're lucky you didn't crack vertebrae. I've taken worse. Lang stepped back, studying her face. No humor, no bravado, just truth delivered without drama. Raina slid off the table before he even finished writing her chart. She reached for her uniform jacket, brushing the dried dust from her sleeve with slow, controlled motions, not agitated, just restoring order. The medbay door opened with a soft hydraulic hiss. Lieutenant Harper stepped in, Internal Affairs Liaison, uniform crisp, hair pinned tight. Commander Locke, she greeted. I was told you fell during training. I need to complete the incident report. Raina slipped her arm into her jacket. It wasn't an accident. Harper's pen froze mid-click. I'm sorry. 3 Marines were behind me. Corporals Mason, Cade, and Turner. Lang's eyes widened. Ma'am, that's... Raina shook her head. Not speculation. Observation. Harper steadied her clipboard. Do you want to file a formal complaint? If they intentionally... Not yet. Harper blinked. Why wait? Raina buttoned her collar. Because complaints warn people. She stepped past them, her voice softer now. Corrections don't. The door closed behind her. Harper exhaled. She should have been concussed. How is she even upright? Lang shook his head. You don't know what she did before she transferred here, do you? Harper's voice dropped. No. What? Lang didn't answer. He just returned to his chart. Down the hallway, Raina walked without slowing. No dramatics, no threats, just precise movement, already thinking ahead. In Building 3, the locker corridor was uncomfortably silent. Mason leaned against a gear locker, arms crossed too tightly, jaw flexing. His eyes kept flicking to the doorway. Cade sat on the bench, chewing the inside of his cheek until it bled. Turner paced fast, restless. She saw us, Mason muttered. You don't know that, Turner said, though he sounded unsure. She looked straight up. Cade dropped his head into his hands. I thought she'd land on the outer bag. Not the hard mats. That fall was bad. If she reports it, we're screwed, Mason said tightly. No, Turner snapped. SEALs don't snitch. They handle it in-house. Mason swallowed. That's what I'm worried about. 2 Marines walked by the doorway. They didn't speak, just looked. Not curious. Not friendly. They already know, Mason whispered. In the SEAL-ready room, quiet conversations buzzed. Petty Officer Keene unlaced his boots as Mendez walked in. Older, steady, unreadable. You hear about Locke? Mendez asked. Keene nodded. The fall. You call that a fall? Mendez raised an eyebrow. That's what they said. She was pushed. Keene paused mid-lace. That's not confirmed. It doesn't need to be, Mendez replied. I saw her posture. She didn't stumble. She reacted. Keene exhaled. Still, 2 stories. And she stood up like it was nothing. She landed right, Mendez said. That wasn't luck. That was muscle memory. You think she lets it go? Mendez stared at the wall. She never lets anything go. She just waits. You served with her before? Yes. He didn't elaborate. In the equipment corridor, the corporals heard pieces of the SEAL room talk drifting through vents and door frames. Not loud, not clear, but heavy. Everyone's watching, Cade whispered. And no one's saying anything, Mason added. Turner leaned against the cold wall. You think she's going to report us? Cade answered first. If she does, we're done. Turner swallowed. If she doesn't, that's worse. No one argued, because what landed on that mat wasn't just a body. It was a memory, one she still hadn't spoken about. By nightfall, the training facility emptied, boots shuffling out in pairs, gear slung in mesh bags, conversations fading into cold silence. But Raina Locke didn't leave. She walked the perimeter alone, jacket half-zipped, one hand resting near her beltline as her shoulder throbbed a slow, pulsing ache. At night, the JUCF complex felt less military and more monastic. Chain-link fences looked like latticework. Fluorescent bulbs buzzed. The wind didn't carry sound, it stole it. Raina climbed the stairwell to the rooftop again. Paused at the top. The edge looked different now. Not dangerous. Predictable. Calculated. She stepped to the yellow marker and crouched, checking spacing between the anchor hooks. 10 inches. Exactly the same as yesterday. Then something caught her eye. A glint under the low beam in the northern corner. She reached down. A small GoPro clamp, half buried in dust. Matte black. Military issue. One side scraped from a drop. Not hers. She turned it over. No serial. No label. But she knew the model, standard issue for helmet mounts during rappel runs. Used often. Dropped often. Or ripped off when someone bolted after a shove. Not proof, but a thread. Raina pocketed the clamp and looked down over the edge. The yard lights below caught movement. A lone recruit, maybe 19, practicing fast kneel transitions near the sandbags. Nervous. Too smooth to be confident. Too rehearsed to be relaxed. The kind who tried twice as hard because someone once told him he wasn't built for the job. He looked up and froze. Lieutenant Commander Raina Locke stood at the rooftop rail. She didn't yell. She simply asked, calm and steady, "You training alone?" He nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am." She tilted her head, voice still quiet. "If you saw anything yesterday, pause. You didn't see it alone." The recruit hesitated, then gave a small, grateful nod. Not relief, understanding. She wasn't threatening him. She was making sure no one felt cornered. Raina turned from the ledge. The wind picked up, carrying not silence this time, but resolve, and the first small weight of evidence in her pocket. The overhead lights in Commander Jace Warwick's office buzzed. Never broken, just constant, like everything else in the building. Efficient. Cold. He sat behind his desk, sleeves rolled up, knuckles resting on a manila folder marked Incident 413, Fall, Tower B, 0734Z. He read the report again, though he'd already gone through it twice. No conclusions, just impact force estimates, MAC compression depth, and a medic's note. Unusual response from subject. Declined full evaluation. Mobility unaffected. A knock. Warwick didn't look up. Enter. Raina stepped in. Perfect posture. Uniform squared. She didn't salute. He didn't ask her to. She stood in front of the desk and waited. "You ready to speak plainly?" he asked. "I always do." He tapped the folder. "You went over the edge. The video doesn't show the push, but it shows your placement. Too close. Not standard. That wasn't positioning, that was intervention." Raina didn't blink. It was deliberate. Warwick leaned back. "You want charges filed?" "No." He raised a brow. "Not yet," she clarified. "They don't need punishment. They pushed you off a rooftop. They need correction. The kind that lasts longer than a form." Warwick studied her, not for anger because she never brought that into his office, but for intention. She wasn't here for revenge. She never was. "You're asking for a drill," he said slowly. "A demonstration." He nodded once and reached for the comm panel. "Then I'll authorize full branch attendance. Warehouse floor, open formation. You'll have what you need." "Mason Cade Turner," she said. "Their names are in the report." He paused. "You planning to humiliate them?" Raina shook her head. "No, that's what they tried. I plan to show them something better." "Which is?" She met his eyes, calm, precise. "Why control always wins." Warwick considered that, then pressed the intercom. "Schedule urban manipulation demonstration." 1,400 hours. Warehouse floor. Full base attendance. Mandatory. Instructor. Lieutenant Commander Locke. He stood as she turned to leave. Try not to break anyone. Raina gave the faintest nod. I don't break people, sir. She stepped through the doorway. I adjust them. The door clicked shut. Warwick remained still, arms folded, watching the empty hallway through the narrow glass panel. He didn't smile, but his expression made one thing clear. They weren't ready. By noon, word had spread through the compound like smoke through a barracks vent. Unclaimed, untraceable, but known by everyone. Urban manipulation and control demonstration. 1,400 hours. Warehouse floor. Mandatory. No one questioned it. Everyone already understood what the announcement meant. The corporals heard it first from a logistics tech passing them in the hall, then from a clipboard on the admin board, then from the silence in the chow line, where even the kitchen crew stopped talking whenever Mason, Cade, or Turner walked past. They barely touched their food. Turner leaned in over his tray. You think she requested this? Cade didn't answer. He looked pale, like someone had whispered a sentence he couldn't unhear. Mason shook his head. It's just a drill. That's all. But even he didn't believe his own voice. By 1350, the warehouse floor was already filling up. Not loud, not formal, just bodies drifting in twos and threes. Marines, SEALs, Air Force instructors, admin staff, and a few observers who technically didn't need to be there but showed up anyway. The space had been cleared. No pallets, no barriers, no obstacles. Just a polished concrete floor, red safety lines marking a clean square, and a padded mat in the center like a surgical table. Overhead fluorescence buzzed to full brightness, flat and unforgiving. Even the training mannequins had been pushed to the walls, as if they wanted nothing to do with what was coming. The corporals arrived last, checked in by a grim-faced petty officer holding a clipboard with the kind of finality usually reserved for courtrooms. They scanned the crowd. No one looked at them, and that more than anything unsettled them. At 1359, the double doors opened. Lieutenant Commander Raina Locke walked in. Uniform crisp, hair pulled tighter than regulations, no baton, no clipboard, just her. She stepped into the center of the red line square. Commander Warwick followed and raised a hand. We are conducting a formal demonstration under interbranch training protocol, he announced. Subject, balance, spatial consequence, and rear contact aggression in confined elevation scenarios. The crowd fell still. He looked to the back. Corporal Mason, Corporal Cade, Corporal Turner. The names dropped into the silence like stones. The three men stepped forward, not by rank, not by force, just chosen. Raina didn't move until they reached the edge of the mat. Then she spoke, flat and controlled, even and centered, hands visible. They obeyed. Not because they were ordered, because the entire room had shifted around them, and only now were they realizing it. Commander Warwick's voice echoed sharply across the floor. This demonstration covers balance, distance management, and the consequences of rear contact aggression. It is non-punitive. It is instructional. It will be recorded. Two assistants raised tablet rigs and tapped record in sync. Silence. Raina stood calmly inside the red square boundary. Hands loose. Boots planted heel to toe, shoulder width apart. No stance. No threat. Just perfect, absolute balance. Like someone who had lived on rooftop edges long before today. She turned slightly toward the three men. Approach, she said. One at a time, as you did yesterday. Corporal Mason went first. He stepped forward slowly, every muscle in his body disagreeing with the decision. He didn't move like a fighter. He moved like a man walking into a memory he couldn't outrun. Mason reached out tentatively, mimicking the same motion from the rooftop, hand high, palm extended. Lieutenant Commander Raina Locke didn't flinch. She pivoted gently on her right heel, guided his wrist across her chest, redirected his weight with a minor shift of her hip, and placed him quietly flat on the mat. Thud. Mason blinked up at the ceiling lights. No pain, no injury. Just impact and humiliation delivered without force. Control confirmed. Warwick called from the sideline. Cade stepped next. He was taller, heavier, less cautious. He led with a shoulder feint, then reached for Reina's collar. She stepped inside the grab, braced her left hand behind his elbow, rotated him forward using only his posture, and lowered him knee first into a controlled fold. Tap. The breath left his chest in a quiet rush. His hands trembled slightly as he blinked up at the lights. Reset. Finally, Turner. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on Earth, but pride wouldn't let him step back. He lunged fast, sloppy. Reina stepped aside, caught his wrist mid-thrust, rotated his arm gently behind his back, and bent him down with one hand between his shoulder blades. His knees hit the mat. His breath hitched. He didn't resist. None of them did now. They knelt, shoulders rising and falling with adrenaline that had nowhere left to go. The crowd watched in silence. Reina stood behind them, spine straight, hands still down. Then she spoke. "This is why you never approach someone from behind." Her voice wasn't loud, but it echoed across the mat, across the floor, into every jaw that clenched and every hand that had once held a phone to record someone else's shame. The corporals didn't look up. They understood now. Reina stepped forward, adjusted the crease at her cuff with one clean motion, and nodded to Commander Warwick. Correction delivered. Warwick marked the form on his clipboard. Demonstration concluded. The cameras stopped recording, but no one moved. The air in the warehouse had changed, and everyone knew it wasn't about punishment. It was about precision. The conference room in Command Wing Alpha wasn't large, but it felt cavernous in its stillness. Commander Warwick sat at the head of the table. Beside him, Lieutenant Harper, Internal Affairs. Across from them sat Mason, Cade, and Turner. Their uniforms were pressed, but their posture wasn't grounded. They knew the floor had shifted beneath their feet. A small GoPro clamp sat on the table between them. Scraped, unassuming, guilty. Harper clicked her pen. "This was found on the roof near the point of fall. Belongs to one of your helmet mounts." Cade looked away. Harper flipped through her report. "We also have 2 witness statements from recruits who saw the approach angle, and surveillance feed showing your proximity moments before the incident." Silence. Warwick didn't raise his voice. "I'm not here to scream at you. I'm here to confirm what you already know." Mason swallowed. "We weren't trying to hurt her, sir." "But you did," Warwick replied, calm and precise. "Not with force, with intent. And you knew it." A long pause. Then Mason nodded. Quiet, defeated. Turner followed. "We weren't thinking." "Correction," Warwick said. "You were thinking only about yourselves." Harper handed him a printed form. Warwick placed it on the table. "You are suspended from joint drill rotations for the next 90 days. You will attend mandatory retraining on elevation safety, proximity discipline, and chain of command interaction. You will also receive formal reprimands for reckless endangerment during an interbranch exercise." All 3 corporals nodded, not in agreement, but in acceptance. Then the door opened. Reina entered, uniform flawless, face composed. She sat at the far end of the table. She didn't look at them, didn't demand apologies. She simply waited. Warwick turned toward her. "We've prepared a commendation citation. Exceptional control under provocation." Reina shook her head. Correction was enough. Harper studied her. "You're declining recognition?" "I didn't act for recognition." Warwick folded the document and set it aside. Reina stood to leave. The corporals didn't meet her eyes, but they watched her with understanding now, not fear. As she passed, Warwick said, "She could have buried you." Then softer, "She chose to teach you." The door closed behind her without a sound. The sun was low when she returned to the training tower. Evening stretched long shadows across the yard, turning the structure into something quieter, more like memory than metal. She stepped through the rooftop door alone. Her boots made almost no sound on the concrete. She walked to the same yellow edge marker where she'd stood the day before, where her shoulder had been shoved, where her body had gone over the side. She didn't look down first. She checked the details, spacing between hooks, tether points, the texture of concrete where her palm pressed. Everything aligned now. Not because the tower had changed, because she had corrected what actually needed correcting. Below, a lone recruit was practicing fast kneel entries. He paused when he saw her silhouette at the edge and gave a nervous half gesture. "You training?" she called. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Keep at it." He returned to his drills, slower, more focused. Raina stood. She didn't linger, didn't pose, didn't let the rooftop become a stage for triumph. She simply stepped back, dusted her hands once, and headed toward the stairwell. Behind her, the tower stood silent, because control didn't belong to the highest rank. It belonged to whoever understood that correction changes more than punishment ever could. And as Raina walked down the stairwell alone, the building didn't feel like a place where something had been broken. It felt like a place where something had been restored. Would you have stayed silent after being shoved off a building? Do you believe correction teaches more than punishment? What would you have done in her place? Spoken up or waited? Drop your answers in the comments. I read every single one. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you never miss the next mission. Share this video with someone who still thinks silence means surrender. And while you're here, watch the next story already on your screen. I'll see you tomorrow.